Hi, it's Carolyn. I am just changing the tab here, and it's going to say the woman who won every prize. Oh, I'm going to change it to lady because I don't have enough characters. All right, there we go. Let's talk about Helene Hadsell while I make some fruit salad. Because I went and got some boxes from the grocery. They're $5 and they're expiring food, which is ridiculous. They're not really expiring. And I haven't done any TikTok lives talking about Helene Hadsell in a while. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to come on here. We're going to chat about Helene. Everybody loves to talk about Helene because I know, and the current hurricane was Helene. I thought, oh dear, what an unfortunate name. But if you want to know anything about Helene Hadsell, leave a question in the comments. My name's Carolyn, and I'm the one that is currently maintaining her legacy. And Helene asked me to do it because I'm known as the contest queen. I've won a ton too, and I teach people how to win. But I wrote sweepstakes books, and I've won prizes. But I'm also a fellow author and entrepreneur, which is what I believe Helene needed to maintain her legacy, because her grandchildren weren't interested, and 2 of her children predeceased her, so there was no one to really take her books and make sure they were available to the public at large. So I have currently republished all of her books in English. 2 of them are in Spanish. 3 of them are on Audible. The 3rd one is now being translated into Spanish and will be out this year. And the last one is being recorded for Audible. So hopefully by the end of the year, they'll all be on Audible. It depends on the studio time I can get. And I was already bumped this week once because we had a conflict. So I keep joining. But it's been a real journey working on her projects, because I still need to do 2 videos on Helene, because everybody keeps doing videos on how she won 5,000 prizes using her famous SPEC method. But the problem is she didn't create the SPEC method in full until 2009. And it might have been a bit before that, but it was definitely in the 2000s. Maybe the 1990s, because in her first book, the first edition of the Name It and Claim It game, there is no SPEC chapter. And she used 3 different techniques to win. The first one was set a goal, which is basically select it. The second one was never entertain any doubts, which is expect it. And the third one is you can con yourself into anything, which is a little bit like expect it, because you're basically retraining your brain to think thoughts, that because if you take the Silva method, which, if you remember, Helene was friends with Jose Silva. Now, she won the house, the famous house, before she met Jose, because, and I had to change the dates in the book. I asked Dyke about this, her son, the last child she had alive. 2 of her children predeceased her. And I asked Dyke about this, and he told me that she was writing some of the stories down, 30 years after they happened. So she might have got the dates wrong, but I did some research and I figured it out. So when they moved into that house, it was like 1965, and it was that New Year's, she tells the famous story where she had the car accident and used the stop the bleeding technique that she learned from Jose Silva to stop the bleeding in her face, because they didn't have airbags back then. I don't even know if she was wearing a seatbelt or if the car even had seatbelts. So her face hit the dash, and she used the stop the bleeding technique to save herself and get herself well enough to get to a hospital. Now, of course, she still needed surgery. So if you go to Words for Winning and look under Helene and photos, I have some photo albums there. I've scanned as many pictures as I could get. There's still a couple that I need to go through, but they're all the pictures that I could find of her from her family. And I need to do some posts on this, because there was one I recognized right away. She came to Canada. She was in Bouchard Gardens in Victoria, which I've been to. It's stunning. She was there, and it's beautiful there. So you can go check out those pictures. But if you see pictures before the accident and after the accident, you can see that her face was wider. Her nose wasn't, she had a very nice slim nose before the accident, and then after the accident, her face was just a little bit, I want to say smushed. But you got to remember, it was 1965, and plastic surgery techniques aren't what they are today. There's a lot of things that aren't the same, like publishing, for example. Like, I was able to do things with her books that she was never able to do, and things she wanted to do but didn't either have the knowledge or the know-how. She wanted to get her books onto CD or books on tape, and she was going to record them on a tape recorder. I'm in a full-on studio with, proper equipment and yada yada. And I can only imagine her trying to record one of her books on a little cassette, and just hold it down. I mean, I have one of her, I found a recording, and it was terrible. It took me a while to even realize it was her. I had my sound producer fix it the best he could, and it was so damaged that as soon as he was finished with it, it snapped. So thank God he managed to get it all. But you have to listen really carefully, and I put it on YouTube, but still sometimes you can't hear it very well. And so I've put in the comments that, because I think YouTube actually degrades the sound even further. So I also put it on my website, like the direct recording. So and you have to listen very carefully to that. But it turned out I only found one of 3 tapes, and it's tape number 2. But I figured, you know what? It's still better to put it on to share the information that Helene had to share. And then I did go back to 2 years after I had initially visited, and I went through her belongings again to see if I missed something. I never found the tapes. I looked and looked. So it's gone. I don't know where it went. But you can listen to the tape on my YouTube, or if you prefer, on my website, and hear her give a speech. There's also some meditations she did. I keep thinking I need to put them. It was a 2-sided tape. I keep thinking I need to make it one audio file. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I might get my guy to do that. And then, because it's a meditation, you don't want to break it, right? And then I've recorded a meditation, Helene Hadsell SPEC style, for everybody, but it's being edited right now. So it'll be a freebie when you get my newsletter on the Words for Winning website. But going back to Helene and her SPEC method, so because I have all her paperwork, and she sent me the SPEC article, and I saw how she wrote it out for the Sun magazine, that was 2009. And if you have her 1988 book, so the very first book didn't have SPEC in it, so the 3 things that she used to manifest all her big prizes, including her fully furnished home, were select it, which is basically, she said, set a goal. Oops, I'm gonna rinse these grapes. Making fruit salad while we chat. And if you have any questions about Helene, just put them in the comments. So set a goal. Never entertain any doubts, which is, you know, expect it, or live in the end result, as Neville Goddard would say. And you can con yourself into anything. Now, she used the you can con yourself into anything to get over her fear of flying, because she was terrified to fly, like terrified. And at this point, she had gone on a few flights, like the kids went to a dude ranch and things like that. But if you recall in the book, the first prize she ever won, they wanted to fly them out, and she's like, I can't do that. So she just refused. They declined the prize. You can put me on a plane anywhere. I will fly anywhere. I do not have Helene's fear of flying. I've been flying. I mean, I think my parents even took me on a plane when I was a baby. I will fly anywhere. I love to travel. I lived in Australia for a year, and unless you're going by boat, there's only one way to get there. I got some pears here. I'm trying to pick which one I think is the best one. This one. So with Helene, that's what she had, and then she expanded it to SPEC. Now, so she didn't win any prizes using SPEC. The other thing she didn't do was actually win 5,000 prizes. I know this because I know a lot of sweepers. I'm also the contest queen. You might have seen me here on TikTok talking about sweepstakes, giveaways, prizes, etc. So yeah, I have 2 channels. Actually, I have 3 businesses. I also do viral marketing for sweepstakes as Idea Majesty, but that channel, all her socials are asleep. I'm not really doing anything with them, but I do get clients for it as I help promote their giveaways on Contest Queen. But as the Contest Queen and someone who enters regularly, plus the hobby has changed since her day, but if you do the math, she would have had to win a prize a day for like 20 years. And even the best sweepers that I know that have won like over $1 million in cash and prizes since they've been entering. And I mean, Tom Cavalli of I Win Contests has passed $1 million. He's won 92 trips. He's never won a house. He's won a truck, but he's never won a car. He's not won 5,000. So it's virtually impossible to win 5,000 prizes, because there's not even the top sweepers are winning 30 prizes a month. So now, did she win? Yes. Part of me thinks she was projecting, actually. So the reason she would say I won 5,000 prizes was because, you know, she put it out there, and then one day it could be true. I'm just wondering if that was her idea. Look at this. This looks delicious. We have nectarines, mandarin oranges, pear, grapes, apple. I love getting the fruit boxes from the grocery store. You know, those apps that save you money? So we have 3. We have Food Hero, Flash Food, and Too Good to Go. And honestly, for fruit and veg, you can't beat Flash Food. We gotta compost that. I thought I would do that while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil. Because, yeah, I have a hot pot. This is the best thing ever. And it keeps water just below boiling. Anyway, yeah, so back to Helene Hadsell. She was amazing. I loved her. Unfortunately, I only spent 4 days with her. Like, I wasn't, and that is funny in itself. Like, I had a podcast before it was cool. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you can hear my interview. I was a terrible interviewer, but it's still better to share the info than to not. So it is what it is. And the other thing is people complain about, the audio and this and that. Well, here's the hilarious thing. Back in the day, we called in on landlines to talk, and it was like Blog Talk Radio. And I had like a dashboard on a website, and then you just hoped everything worked. There was no adjusting volume. There was no controlling anything. So, we're going to fold the laundry. I love chatting while I do housework because I kill two birds with one stone. That's what I like to do. Multitask at its finest. I love astrology. I'm also a triple Capricorn. My sun, my moon, and my Mercury are all Capricorn. My rising's Gemini. Helene was a Gemini. Now, if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that I interviewed, also I have a blog about it, Sarah Jordan. We did Helene's numerology because had Helene been alive, she would have been 100 years old this year. How crazy is that? That would have been something, right? If she'd still alive. So I've been interviewing different people. So I had an interview with her granddaughter, Melissa, which was really cool. I'm going to go visit her again next August because the annual National Sweepstakes Convention is in Arkansas, where she lives. So I'm very excited to go hang out with her. I tried to do that earlier this year, but we had our wires crossed and the timing wasn't right. So I just dropped some books off from Helene's library that she wanted. And so I dropped those off. And the Blue Buddha I used to have here because she never took anything from the house. Because the house has been closed up for 14 years now. So it's in a bit of disrepair at this point. But that's okay. Anyway, so I gave her those. And then I interviewed Sarah Jordan about Helene's numerology and tarot. And then I had Marco Malbach, I believe it's pronounced, on to talk about her human design, which was fascinating. And he actually compared my human design to her human design, and some of her circuits I complete. So it really does make sense that I'm maintaining her legacy. How crazy is that, right? And I'm just waiting on astrologer Robert O'Hara to have a break in his schedule because he's extremely busy. But he's like the most interesting astrologer I know because he doesn't have your usual take on things that a lot of astrologers have. He loves his archetypes. Actually, he wrote the book Transforming Fate into Destiny. That was the foreword is by Carolyn Mace. So he actually studied with her. He met Norm Shealy, who recently passed away. And so he knew Norm, and Norm introduced him to Carolyn. And he wrote something one day, and she goes, "Wow, this is fantastic. Can I send it out to my newsletter?" And he instantly blew up, which was amazing. So he's my favorite astrologer because he talks archetypal astrology. And he's also an intuitive. So this isn't your usual, your astrology. He'll say, yeah, your sign is here and you're doing that, but this is what it means. So I think it's really cool. I'm a little bit biased. So anyway, yeah, so Helene and I were similar in that, she's a Gemini and I was a Gemini. I'm a Gemini rising. So I don't think it's an accident she asked me to maintain her legacy, but we know from a lot of different teachers, including Jose Silva, that there are no accidents. It's all synchronistic. It's coincidences are there on purpose. So I have 2 videos to do about Helene. One is that she didn't win 5,000 prizes. God bless her. She won a lot. She did win a ton of trips. Actually, the crazy one, if you read her book, In Contact with Other Realms, she has a whole thing in there where she's traveling with the Institute of Psychiatry, American Psychiatry or something like that. And she talks about how she wanted to go see Eileen Garrett. And she kept sending her mental texts, right? Which is one of the things you learn when you take the Silva method. You learn mental texting. I did it earlier this year on Valentine's because I wanted to test it out. Because, I've taken the Silva method like I don't know how many times. And then sometimes I think, this stuff doesn't work. And then I test it and it works. Thanks. I hope you have a great day too. So I tested out the mental texting, and George is my boyfriend. God, he's the loveliest man, one of the kindest men you'll ever meet. He's not super romantic. And so only the first Valentine's we were together did he buy me flowers. And I thought, you know what? I would like flowers for Valentine's Day. So every day, whenever I thought about it, that's what Helene would say, just give it energy. I just kept saying, in my head, George, hey, George, I would love some flowers for Valentine's Day. Well, Valentine's Day, so I did it for 2 weeks. And then on Valentine's Day, George said, oh, I have to go to Costco. Where's the list? I'm like, oh, it's on the fridge. I wasn't even thinking anything of it. I'm doing whatever I'm doing because I work from home. So I'm just doing what I'm doing. Sometimes I love to sit right here on the couch. I have a nice tray that he bought me with, and I have my little Chromebook. And some of the work I can do on there. So sometimes I'll just sit really super cozy and just work. That's the beauty of working from home, right? You can do all those types of things. So he comes back from Costco with the groceries. Oh, and flowers. Not just for me, but my daughter Lane. He had flowers for both of us. What? He hasn't bought flowers in 7 years. And he came home with flowers. And I was like, so I did a video. If you scroll back on TikTok, you'll see it. I feel like this stuff works. And yeah, it's crazy how it works. It's crazy how it works. And Helene used to do that with Jose. They didn't have cell phones back in the 60s and 70s when she was his assistant. And if she needed something like, a newspaper wanted to interview him or the local television station wanted to have him on, she would just send him a mental text, and within an hour, he'd phone her and say, what do you want? Can you manifest a document being AP? Okay. Oh, approved. You wouldn't manifest the document being approved. Like, what is the document for? Right? You kind of always go past it. So say, for example, a lot of people want to win the lottery and they say, oh, I'm going to buy a house with that money. Well, then you don't focus on the lottery, you focus on the house, and then let the universe come how it comes. So I'll give you an example. This story is in Helene's book. And I'll tell you what happened after because it's crazy. It basically came to life for me from the book. So in the book, it's in the Name It and Claim It game. Okay, so I can't remember the name of the chapter. But there's a woman who attended one of Helene. So after she got to a certain point in her career, not only was she assisting Jose, she was on the lecture circuit. She was talking. Oh, it's a worker's permit. So then you would see yourself working. Just picture yourself in the role because you can't work without it being approved. So you see yourself as a successful, whatever it is that you're getting approved for. So if you're like a welder, you see yourself with the helmet and the torch in your hand, and you can feel the heat, and you can smell the smells in the workshop, and you can feel the heavy construction boots on your feet because you got to protect your feet, and maybe that apron, the leather apron around your waist, you can practically feel it on your body. So go past the document being approved to whatever it is. Or if it's for, you know, you need the document approved because you have to be certified to be like a paralegal or something. You have to have a document, right? Then you see yourself in the office, getting a coffee in the morning, going to your desk, sitting down, firing up your laptop, answering emails for clients, printing documents out, you know, sending things to things, successful phone calls with clients, things like that. So just see yourself in the job. You know, you can hear other people in the office. You can kind of a things. So yeah, so just go past. It's always the end result. So the end result is past. This is where I think a lot of people get stuck. They're like, well, I need this document. Yeah, you need the document, but you want the document to do this. So you're going to focus on this, not this. You don't focus on all the steps. You focus on where the steps will get you. So the point of the story is, so this woman, it's in the book, she wanted a cruise. She had a neighbor. Now, this was back in the 70s. Like, nobody was cruising in the 70s. I mean, everybody cruises now. Everyone's been on a cruise except for me. Well, let me tell you the story. I had never been on a cruise. And in the book, there's a woman that I think it was, what version of the book was in? I think the woman went on the cruise in the 80s. Okay, so Helene was on the lecture circuit. This woman came to her course, and she came and talked to Helene after and said, look, I've always wanted to go on a cruise. My neighbor went to the Bahamas, and it sounded amazing. But I don't contest like you. Sorry, it's not in the family budget. My husband's not interested in going. I don't contest like you. I don't enter giveaways. So how do I make this thing happen? I don't have any of the things. Helene's like, don't worry about that. Just focus on the end result. So she has all these barriers to cruising. She cannot figure out how it's going to happen, but that's the point. You don't figure out how it's going to happen. The how, Mike Dooley says this all the time, and I love it. The how is the domain of the universe. You don't worry about how. So she just kept visualizing herself on a cruise to the Bahamas. And during that time, she was also taking an art course. So she's at this course, and you know, you talk to the other people attending, and she was talking to this one woman who was a cosmetic salesperson. They had a contest for the most sales. You know, there's a lot of sales promotional contests for businesses, and the people who sold the most in each region would win a cruise. So it's, you know, a lot of companies do that type of thing, you know, to encourage sales. They call them sales contests, right? So it's only for the people that are there. And she knew she had sold the most for her region, so she was excited. She was going to go on this cruise. And this woman said to her, well, that's amazing. I've always wanted to go on a cruise. I hope it's everything you've ever dreamed of. Well, 2 days before the cruise goes, this woman gets a call from her friend who says, hey, my son has appendicitis, has to have surgery. I can't go on the cruise now. The ticket's already paid for. If it's not used, it'll just go to waste. Do you want my ticket? What? So Helene, 4 weeks after she talked to Helene, she sends her a postcard that says, I named it and claimed it. Postmarked the Bahamas. Now, I was reading the Audible book at this point. Okay, so I'm recording. I'm also assisting the Silva method, like Helene did, but I'm part of a larger team. There's eight of us that usually help out. And even though I'm also in the program to become a Silva instructor, sometimes I assist, sometimes I take it, because you need so many times taking it to complete your certification. So, but at this point, I was assisting on this one. So I'm assisting. So anytime I'm not helping outside the room or whatever I'm doing, I sit in. There's a lot of meditating. So the course, the 4-day intensive immersion is 40 hours, 10 hours a day. And about 10 hours of that spread over 4 days, so you don't do it all at once, is meditating. You're meditating on this technique, you're meditating on that exercise. All of it is through meditation because you got to go from beta to alpha. I'll talk more about that later. So I'm doing a lot of meditating over a couple of days extra. And on the Saturday afternoon, I get a text from my friend. She goes, do you want to go on a cruise? And I go, I can't. Sorry, thanks. That'd be great. But I'm spending a lot of money on an audio producer right now, so it's not in my budget. You know, when you own your own business, you have a lot of expenses that most people don't have, right? I'm paying an audio producer for studio time and editing and all that. And I must say, I'm really proud of the audiobooks. I think they came out fantastic. I also hired him to translate some stuff to fix those recordings that I've been putting up on YouTube. And he just recorded a meditation with me. Is there a good meditation you recommend on YouTube? Well, I've been doing all the Silva ones. So the one I've been doing is called the Long Relax. Or if you find the Vishen Lakhani one, it's called the Centering Exercise. But if you want to try something different, every other Monday, Silva Canada hosts an introductory, you can find it on my blog, right on my Words for Winning homepage. You can click on it. It's a free introductory class to the Silva method. And he does 2 meditations in it, a 7-minute and like an 18-minute. And the 18-minute is mental house cleaning, which is one of the techniques you learn in the Silva method. So he gives you like a little taste of it. So that's kind of fun to do too. I really like all the Silva method meditations only because I'm starting to figure out the more I work with it, the more I realize that Jose Silva was the OG of all the programs out there. Because a lot of the big teachers, if you look at what they've done, they've all taken the Silva method. Vishen Lakhani, who owns Mind Valley, is a certified Silva instructor. He's teaching that quantum jumping class by Bert Goldman, who is a certified Silva instructor. So he, by the way, he knew Helene. And I'm doing Tag Powell's books, who is a Silva instructor. Helene worked with Jose. I just took it with Ken Casilla. He actually certified Tag, knew Bert, knew Helene. Now he knows me. Like there's so many Silva touch points. So I'm really liking the Silva meditations only because I'm finding that they are kind of the OG of all the programs out there. But that's just my take on it. The reason that all these other, and like Jack Canfield took Silva. Wayne Dyer took Silva. Like there's so many people that have taken it because, like I said, it's kind of the original. Anyway. So I said to her, like, I can't afford this cruise. She goes, Mike has taken too much sick time because he'd broken his leg back in March and used up all his sick days. She said he can't take any more time off work because they'd already had a vacation booked for September. She said he can't take any more time off work. Do you want his ticket? I was like, what do I have to do? She goes, can you get to Miami? I'm like, done. Guess where the cruise went? Miami, to the Dominican, to the Bahamas, and to back to Miami. What? I'm in the Bahamas and I'm just like gobsmacked that 6 weeks from when I spoke the words about a cruise to the Bahamas, I was in the Bahamas for free. Well, I did have to pay a plane ticket to get to Miami, but I still consider it free. It's like, what? So that's, I wasn't even focusing on it. I mean, yeah, I've always wanted to go on a cruise, but I manifested it. Like it was mental. It was mental how that happened. So I read the book. I highly recommend if you read any motivational, inspirational, self-improvement, any of those types of new thought, metaphysical, whatever, read them out loud. Read them once regularly, and on your second pass, if you read them out loud to yourself. Because I had edited Helene's book like 100 times, and
when I was reading it out loud for Audible, there was some things that she said or wrote that struck me so differently when I was reading them out loud. I'm like, man, I'm thinking in my head as I'm talking, right? I'm like reading this for the Audible. And in my head, I'm going, holy crap, this is brilliant. Like, how did I not catch on to how deep this lesson is on this page or in this chapter when I read it? Like, sometimes saying stuff out loud. So I highly recommend, and it's not the same as listening to it on Audible because you're saying it. It's kind of like why I like to take notes when I take a course. Like when I'm taking the Silva method, I have a spiral bound notebooks that I can, fold over flat. And I like to take notes because it's the kinesthetic exercise. I could have my little Chromebook and take notes, but it's not the same. It's not the same as typing out the notes. Isn't the same as oh, I think the kettle's ready. Let's go get that tea. I clearly need it. I've been talking for a hot minute. Anyway, so yeah, I highly recommend. How big a tea do I want? Do I want a big one? Maybe. Look at that. Sprinkles are for winners. One of my sweepstakes friends sent me that. I love this mug. And then, of course, I go to Trader Joe's and get their Irish breakfast tea, but then I put it in a Tetley tea can. Yeah, that's funny. Anyway, yeah, you can. So it's interesting how things manifest because it's never what you think. And the idea is to just let it go, right? Don't focus on the how, focus on the end result. So for example, you need a certification, you see yourself in a job, a specific job, and you might be applying to a certain place, but then you get a different one. You get a different role somewhere else that actually works out better because it might have more perks or better benefits or anything. Like I'll tell you the story that's in her Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage book. Dr. Joseph Murphy. Now, this is a story I don't think anybody has about Dr. Murphy. Now, Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage and A Man Called Friday were never available to the general public. Helene never got ISBNs for them. She wrote these books and then printed a bunch, went to a local printer shop, and some of them were cut terrible. One day I'm looking at one as I'm transcribing, and we're creating a digital version so that I can get it on paperback and ebook. And the cover is going like this, like it's. So when you open the book, the tops come in. It's like, wow, whoever cut this did a terrible job. Anyway. So she would advertise her books in the backs of her books, but unless you knew her or found her somewhere and then mailed her a check for like $12, you would never get this book. Anyway, so I transcribed the whole thing and same with A Man Called Friday and made them available. So technically they're the second editions of the books, but in a way they're not because there's no first ISBN. But I kept them that way. I showed when I did the copyright pages, I showed the original year she published them and then my update year. And so, and then in the translated editions, it'll say, like the Name It and Claim It game. When I did it as in Spanish, so it has the proper English copyrights, and then it says Spanish edition is 2024. Actually, that one was 2023. And then I did the Spanish edition of In Contact with Other Realms, and I'm editing currently the Spanish edition of A Man Called Friday. And right now I'm recording Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage for Audible. and then it gets translated, because one of the things we have found when recording, this is why I do the translations after the Audible edition. One of the things I have found while recording is sometimes things don't sound right. So I have to change a sentence because it reads fine. Like you read the book, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You say it out loud, you're like, that sounds so stupid. Like I have to change a word or cut a sentence in half because she likes to like write these long ass sentences. Or in the case of In Contact with Other Realms, we had to flip 2 chapters because it was fine when you were reading the book, but when you hear the stories, the order of the stories didn't make any sense. And so we had to flip 2 stories so that the listening flowed properly. So the audio producer, I came in one day and he said, this doesn't sound right. I go, what's the problem? He goes, these 2 chapters need to be flipped. I'm like, okay. He's like, what do you mean, okay? I'm like, my job is to maintain her legacy to the highest possible standard that I can. And if flipping 2 chapters in her book makes it better, then I will. And he's like, okay. So we did. I flipped 2 chapters in the print. So then anybody who got the print edition before the Audible has it the way she wrote it. And if you buy In Contact with Other Realms after the Audible edition was out, it's in the new order. It doesn't actually make any difference. You get the whole book. Like, I didn't take anything out. Actually, I added stuff to all the books. I added a foreword or an introduction, depending on the format. I added notes where necessary because sometimes things had changed. So, for example, she talked about going to an organization in the UK, which is escaping my mind at the moment, the Spiritualist. It wasn't a Spiritualist church. It was like the Spiritualist Association of Britain or something. Anyway, they had moved since she was there. So I put in the new address and their website. So I put notes. So if people were interested and they wanted to follow up, they could. So I was saying back to, I know it's like a big circle, back to how I know she didn't win 5,000 prizes, but she was on a trip. She talks about in Contact with Other Realms, she talks about a trip, and she was doing the mental texting to Eileen Garrett. So now they're on this trip, and they were going to do this side tour to go see Eileen Garrett. But she didn't know if she was going to go or not because she hadn't got an answer yet, and she didn't know. And she was kind of stating to the universe, hey, I need an answer. And her husband's like, we're getting closer to the date. We have to go. We have to make a decision. We have to buy train tickets. And she's like, she didn't feel like she had an answer yet. So she said to her husband, well, okay, I'll tell you what. We're going to go out today. We're going to walk around. We're going to have lunch. And then I'll tell you. And then at some point she says to him, how much are the train tickets to go to see Eileen? And he had checked and he said 88 lira. She's like, okay. So they go have lunch and they're going for a walk, and she looks down. Now they're in Italy at this point. It was 88 lira. So she looks down. They're all in the euro now, but back then they had their own currency. She looks down. She sees a wallet. She picks it up. There's no ID. There's nothing in it except for 88 lira. She's like, oh, I have my answer. We're going. So her husband's like, well, what do we do with the money? She goes, I don't care. Turn it into the police station. Give it to the church. Whatever. But that's our answer. Because it wasn't even an ID. They couldn't even return it. But she said, we're going to go. So sometimes you think, did she really do that stuff? Was it really that cool? I found I've scanned it and I'm putting it out next summer. Like, as I have to do a whole story with it and I have to get all the scans, and I'm going to post it on the dates that it actually happened. Like so many years later. But I found this pamphlet encircled on the date, and she wrote 88 lira. And I was like, oh my God, that is the story right there. She wrote it down. I was like, holy cow. Because the one thing I couldn't find in her house was the her journals. I know, right? Whoa. I was like, holy cow. And the thing is so like fold. You know how when you take a pamphlet and you fold it and fold it and fold it, the creases are so delicate. So I don't, I scanned it. I took it to Staples because I have a scanner, but not that big. Because, by the time you fold out a pamphlet, it becomes like this, right? And I still had to scan it in 2 pieces at Staples. So I've got to, stitch it together and all that for it to look nice. Oh, dryer ball. Oh, I just dropped it. Oh, well. So yeah, it's crazy, some of the stuff. So I think, okay, so this story's true. Then back to Dr. Joseph Murphy, and this one's in Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage. The woman hung around the coolest people. So once she was on the lecture circuit, for some reason for years, I thought the book she read was Think and Grow Rich. I don't know why I thought that. It was actually The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. I should have known that, but anyway. So she read that book, and that's what made her think, well, I can contest because I can have anything I set my mind to. And she's not wrong. But anyway. So she read his book, but I guess at some point she had met him because Dr. Joseph Murphy calls her up and says, Norman, Mr. Peale, or Norman says I should call you if I want to talk about this. And she's like, okay. And he says, I'm going to come for dinner. And he said, and then after dinner, your husband and my guy are going to go sit and you and I are going to talk. She's like, what do you want for dinner? And he tells her like a steak and whatever. And she's like, okay. So she makes him whatever he wants for dinner. And after dinner, they sit and talk. And he says, I'm going to tell you a story. So the story goes like this. He was broke as anything. Like he could barely survive. He had a room in a boarding house. Like he didn't even have his own apartment. He had like a hot plate. He used to eat a lot of soup. Maybe the occasional sandwich. He lived meagerly. And he was earning money by doing positive things on the radio. Like he would do positive affirmations. So like how we go on YouTube now and listen to meditations and things. Back in the day, he was recording those. And then they were put on the air. And he decided that he wanted a house big enough that he could live comfortably, and it would also have a recording studio. So he would do his meditations every day, and he would start envisioning this house. Again, this is where the Silva method comes in, because you learn to do all your creations in alpha and then take action in beta. Right? So what I'm doing with you here now is all beta. Right? But this morning when I first woke up, I did, because it's you're as close as you're going to get to the hypnagogic state. That's why they say meditation first thing in the morning is the best, because right as you're waking up and right as you're falling asleep, that's when you're connected. Anyway, so he tells her the story. Every day he was sitting there doing his meditation, and he was envisioning this beautiful house with, circular stairs and gardens and this and that. And he was getting really detailed. Like every day he would envision living in this house, and it had a recording studio, and it had all the things he needed to help others and for him to feel, successful, etc. So you're thinking, well, that's fantastic. Well, and meanwhile, in his 3D world, he is cooking soup on a hot plate. So people go, well, I don't know how he's going to go from a hot plate house to, this mansion. Like, what's he going to do? Win the lottery? he didn't worry about how it was going to happen. He's just focusing on the end result. He's doing this every day for about 5 months, and I'm going to guess those meditations lasted him anywhere between half an hour to an hour. Because you need to kind of have some time in the with the subconscious to get those things to happen. At least that's what I'm finding. But even if you start with 5 minutes a day, it's like going to the gym, right? You start off slow and then you build up. Anyway, and there's no right. I'm going to do a video on the tip Ken taught us about when you meditate. He always wondered if he was really an alpha. So he started saying, as the meditation takes you to alpha, he goes, I'm an alpha, whatever that means. Like, whatever that means. That's hilarious. Anyway, so he's doing this every day. And 5 months in, there's a knock on the door, and it's a solicitor. Of course, he didn't have a phone. The guy found out where he lived from the radio station, and this very wealthy woman had passed away, had no family, and loved his work so much because she inspired him during her time of need that she left him everything. And what do you guess he had? It was a mansion. So the solicitor takes him to this mansion to show him what he inherited. And he says to Helene, well, and I almost blew it, because as we're going up the circular stairs that I envisioned, I said, is there a recording studio upstairs? And the solicitor looked at him and said, have you been here before? And he said, oh no, this just looks like the type of house that would have one. And so he had this house, and then so he said to Helene, what do you think of that? How do you think I envisioned this house so perfectly? And he says, I think you could pick up her thought forms, because thought forms float. I mean, there's a famous story of Prince he's, doing whatever he's doing. He's writing his music. It's the middle of the night. He has an idea. He has an inspiration for a song. He gets his music producer out of bed and tells him, come down here now. We have to record it right now, because if we don't record this right now, Michael Jackson will. We have to record this right now, because he knew thoughts floated. And if he didn't take it, it was going to keep going. So Helene said to him, yeah, she was giving out the thought of her house, you enjoying the house, because she was enjoying your inspiration, and she was sending you those thoughts of this house, and you were picking up on her thought forms. That's Helene's take on it, which I find fascinating. It's kind of like mental texting, really, which is, what I was talking about. So it's very fascinating how all the different things, they all tie into each other, right? Like Dr. Joseph Murphy wrote all those books on the subconscious. And he was able to do that because of this woman who gave him a place to live and the means to help everyone on a larger scale, right? So that's one of the things I tell people. You don't know how big your pebble is. So a lot of people think, well, I don't make a lick of difference in the world. You don't know that one person that you say something to, you change their life, and then they go out and they help thousands of people. Well, that means you helped thousands of people through the one, because that rippled out like a stone being thrown into a pond. And you just don't know where that's going. So Robert Ohotto always likes to say, live each day as if you're the answer to somebody's prayers. Right? How amazing is that? Now, if anybody has any questions about Helene Hadsell or any of her adventures, or Tag Powell, who I haven't really talked about, I unfortunately didn't really know Tag because I met him at the end of his life when he'd already had a stroke and COPD, and he loved what I did with Helene's books. So I asked him, I figured out he wrote about 75 books. Now, most of them were booklets. Like if you go on Amazon and look him up, you'll see most of them are tiny books, but the actual meat and potato type books, I bought the rights to 10, but 2 was the first and second edition of the Silva Method to Mind Mastery. Again, another reason I'm becoming a Silva instructor, because I feel like I can't teach what I don't know, right? So I want to know the Silva method inside out and backwards, so that when I'm publishing these books and talking to people about all of them, oh my gosh, hold on. We're going to go get all the rest of the laundry that's all over the floor here. I tend to dump out the baskets on the floor and then just pick things up and make piles. That's what I like to do. Very methodical laundry folder. And I found a towel I missed. I usually like to put all the towels together at the bottom. And then I'm like, oh no, they won't all fit now. Oh well. I know. And it's Saturday. I do sheets tomorrow. And then anything I missed. And I love thrifting. Look at these tights that I found thrifting. How fun are these? They look like the universe. I had to buy them. Anyway, so I didn't know much about Tag Powell because I met him at the end of his life. And I knew when we agreed for me to do his work, because he loved what I did with Helene's, I had to get going on it. So I had to hire a detective. There's actually a detective. She specializes in vetting contest winners, which is how I met her. Because, like, for example, if you win the HGTV house, you agree in the contest rules to be pre-vetted. And I'm so excited. The most recent HGTV winner reached out to me, and she's going to be on my other YouTube channel, Contest Queen. I'm going to interview her because that's one of the big prizes. People go, well, the odds are slim. I'm never going to win. I'm meeting one of the winners. I'm so excited. They took the cash option, of course, because there has been stories of people taking the house, but then they end up selling it because the tax responsibility is too large. So it is what it is. And then they end up selling it later. I know I thrifted these too. How could I say no to this? They are crazy. I discovered they are too hot for hot yoga. So they are for regular everyday wear, or because I live in yoga clothes. Why wouldn't I? I work from home. And it's much more comfortable to sit at my desk for hours in yoga pants writing than it is to be dressed up. Anyway, what the heck is happening with this thing? Yeah, I won a hot tub, so we're still out there using the hot tub even though it's not warm enough to swim anymore. Yeah, I instantly won a hot tub. That was probably that's my biggest instant win. It was worth $5,000. I know Helene would have loved that. So that's something she couldn't do back in her day, because she tried to talk about instants in 1988 in her book. And, but the problem is when you're doing mail-ins, there's no real way to win an instant prize. Not like today, not like, I've done some videos on my Contest Queen channel where I film, I get a code and I'll enter it, and I'll film my entering it just to see if I hit. And I think I did one with A&W, and I think that was the one I won a burger or something instantly, and then I'm in the draw for the $25,000. So that's something you can go see on my other channel. I know that's the problem with my crossover. So my tagline on Words for Winning is how to win in life. Oh, and sweepstakes, because I have all my sweepstakes books there. They're quite fun. I'm finalizing prizes everywhere. That'll be out this year. So I'm very excited. So my first sweepstakes book came out in 2008. The second one came out in 2016. So the third one's coming out in 2024. See a pattern there? And yeah, so Helene never wrote her first book didn't have any of the how to win. It would just talked about the mindset of winning. And then when she did the second edition in 1988, the first half of the book is the first book. And then, oh, there's a missing chapter. This is interesting. So then she added a whole section on things and questions she had over the years, like that cruise story and how she how she won a truck instead of a car, and things like that. That's all in the second half of the second edition. Of course, it's all in the edition I have now. But then she... I just had a brain hiccup. Where was I going with this? Okay, let me have a drink of tea. Maybe it'll come back to me. That's the problem. I've been talking for like, I don't know, over an hour. But, okay, well, I'll just pick up wherever. Helene, oh yeah, so it was more robust. And she did talk a little bit in the second one of how she would enter and win, because it was mostly mail-in in those days. And she also has a little bit on winning the lottery. Now, people were angry. I get messages all the time. It's kind of crazy. I get messages of people who are mad that she didn't win the lottery. And I say to those people, first of all, she never had a chance, because Texas didn't have a state lottery until 1992. Well, she won the House in 1965. She already had everything she ever wanted. She won all the trips. She won the cash. She won the car. She won the house. She won it already. Like, what does she need the lottery for? She'd already won it all. She was already comfortable. She had her... I think after, I don't know how many years, they sold that house that she won. And they moved to Alvarado, and she opened the Delta Sciences Center. And I have pictures from when they bought it in the 80s. Like, basically, they lived in the house they won for 20 years. And it was the third house in a development in the middle of nowhere. Now, if you go to Texas, go to Irving, it is in the middle of everything. It is so busy there. It's also in an HOA now, which I find kind of sad, but anyway. Oh, where's the insert to this bra go? I don't know. I'll flex that later. So, so she already had everything. So what does she need to win the lottery for? I mean, people want to win the lottery to do certain things. Well, if you've already done those certain things, what do you need the lottery for? You don't. You don't need the lottery. So that's why I tell people, don't focus on the money. That's one of my best videos on here. Don't focus on the money. Focus on the end result. What do you want the money for? You want it for a house? Focus on the house. You want it for a car? Focus on the car. You don't know how it'll come. Don't worry about that. Just like the woman who won a cruise, who went on that cruise. She didn't know how the cruise was going to show up, but she went on a cruise. Didn't cost her anything. And it was a pretty quick manifestation, too. It was 4 weeks from when she thought about it to when she was sailing. Right? So don't worry about that. You just focus on the end result. Like, for example, I put on my vision board one year, because I like my vision boards, that I wanted to do Audible books. I didn't have the budget for Audible books. And then... after my grandmother passed away, we were going through the apartment, and I found all these tapes, these like 8mm, films. And so then I looked up who could digitize them. And I found this guy like one town over. And I took them to him, and he did a great job. And then I was cleaning up my desk, and I found his business card one day, or I was doing my accounting. I think that's what it is. I think I was doing my accounting, and I'm filing everything because I take it to the accountant so the bookkeeper can, type everything up. but I don't just hand them a box of files. I sort everything. Like here are the bank records, here are the receipts, here's this. I've been talking a long time. I got to do the puzzle piece thing to prove that I'm real. There you go. I'm real. So, and then I realized, oh, maybe he does that. So I sent him an email and I said, hey, do you do Audible books? He goes, yeah, all the time. I was like, oh, what do you charge? He told me. I'm like, I might be able to afford that. I said, so I did a poll on my Facebook and said to everyone, hey, I'm looking to do Audible books. Should I hire a voice actor or a narrator that sounds like Helene? Or should I do the books? And everyone said, she asked you to maintain her legacy. You should record the books. I was like, all right. So I hired him. I said, well, I want to just come and do a test to see if I can do it before I start down this road, or I have to hire somebody. Like, what am I going to do? He goes, okay, come on in. So I book a time, I go in, I start doing the readings. He goes, you sound great. I'm like, really? He said, yeah, I do a lot of books. You sound good. I said, okay. So then we just kept going. And I've been in that studio now almost I took a break over the summer because I was super busy with the Silva method. But I've been in that recording studio almost every week since 2022. So basically 2 years. And the first book came out in 2003. Like, it was the end of 22. So 2003, 23. So we've got 3 books out. So last year, the Name It and Claim It game came out in Audible, and then In Contact with Other Realms, and then A Man Called Friday was already done. And now I'm working on Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage. Now, I want to do Tag's books as Audible. I will not read his. I am hiring a male voice actor to do his. So I have to actually create an Audible edition of the book. Because that book, Money and You, has a lot of exercises with it, what I have to do is write in, because when you hire a voice actor, they literally just read what you wrote. So I'll have to say, stop here, please refer to page 2 of the PDF that accompanied this audiobook and complete the exercise. And you have to actually write that in. And then after I upload all the files to Audible, then you have to email them and say, hey, this PDF needs to be able to be downloaded after the book has been purchased. So people can do the exercises. So I have that already for the Kindle books, because if you buy a Kindle or a Kobo, you can't write. So I made a PDF special just for those exercises. So it's going to be close to that one, but it'll have to be altered a little bit for the Audible edition. But if you buy Money and You on Audible or on Kobo or, Kindle or any of those platforms right now, you can just download the free book and do that. So it's been fun working with Helene. And so anyway, back to the missing chapter. So what happened was, while I'm working on these books, I managed to get a hold of a first edition. I only ever had the second and third editions. Well, so here's what happened. She wrote the book in 1971, and it was published by Divorce and Company. And then in 1988, it was republished by Top of the Mountain Publishing. It's Tag's company. That's how she met Tag, and that's how I met Tag and how I bought his work anyway. So they also took out a chapter, but I didn't know that because I only had that edition. And then when that one went out of print, she started printing it herself at home. So you'd get like it almost photocopied or and then surloxed. And if you have to look up surloxed, then, or if you don't have to look up surloxed, I know how old you are. So they'd be surloxed, and then she would just mail them to you. So it was basically a sheet of paper cut in half and then folded over, and then it's like a binder, bound at home. And so she would add to the book or change things and update it, and she would do those things, but she had no tech skills. Now, you have to remember that she's doing this in like 2003 on a computer, like a DOS-based computer. I mean, the programs aren't like there today, but she also wasn't techie. So she edited those books with the return key and the space bar. And she would just put things wherever they could fit. I had to move a lot of stuff around and fix it so it flowed. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so she did that, and then I ended up buying the rights. So I don't consider the one she surloxed at home an edition. Anyway, I get a copy of the very first edition, and I realized there's a chapter in there that's not in anything I've had. And I was panicking because I thought, oh my God, do I have to redo this book? Then I realized that story still exists. She just changed it to a different book. So the missing chapter is actually a chapter in Contact with Other Realms. So she took a chapter out of the Name It and Claim It game and moved it to In Contact with Other Realms. And when you read it, it makes sense. Now, just because I don't like to gatekeep, I put that missing chapter on my website. So if you go to Words for Winning, right on the homepage, you can tap on the missing chapter and you can download it and read it for free. And that's the one that, was like not included in the book. And I didn't feel like editing the book and putting it in. Then I'd have to redo the Audible. I'm like, and it's also in another book already. Not all of it, because part of it she talks about losing weight. And I'm like, that doesn't belong in any book. So I just gave it out to people for free. So if you go to my website, you can just download it and read it and enjoy it all you want. Anyway, I am almost finished the laundry here. Oh, I can sit and do the socks. I like talking about Helene because she's fun. If you have any questions about Helene, just post it in the comments and I'll answer them while we chat, while we sit here and I do the socks. The socks. We have to match the socks. I saw this thing where you can clip the socks together. I never do. I'm so lazy. Most of them you can figure out, but the work socks. He's a contractor, and he buys bags of the same socks, and then trying to match them up so that they're all the same is like, all right, here we go. And some of them have holes, but I refuse to throw out his socks. He's a grown-ass man. If he doesn't want his socks, he can throw them out himself. Actually, we have fabric recycling in our town. We have bins where they do textile recycling, which I think is fantastic. So then anything that isn't good for the thrift store, but would be perfect for fabric recycling, we put in that bin. So actually I have 2 boxes in the basement. One is for the thrift store and one is for like donations and one is for fabric recycling, and then when the bag gets full I take it. And it's a bin just like you see for the donation bins in parking lots. It's the exact same. It's kind of cool, actually. I like that our town does that. Oops, these are 2 different socks. So I don't think they had things like that in the day. But yeah, I'm lucky. I found a lot of things from Helene, and I've put whatever I can find that hasn't been published before out there for people, because like she took that missing chapter and she put it in another book, but she didn't identify it. But she also took part of it out. So this way, when I did it, you get all of it, all the missing bits, everything. So you can just read about her at any time and enjoy her stories. And then she used to have a blog. She had a blog for a little while, and then it has long gone. So I managed to salvage those posts, and I've started republishing those too. And I've been trying to do them on the date. So if she did something on, July 6th, I've been reposting them on the same day that she did. So the blogs would have some continuity. I just thought that was kind of fun. And I say when it was originally published, like, hey, this was published July 6, 2009. And now it was republished July 6, 2024. So it's the same kind of day. And then there's articles I have found in her files. I did manage to get a bunch of computer files. So I found so many diskettes in her house now. A bunch of them I was able to get data off of. I had to go buy an old 486 computer. How crazy is that? And then I got a bunch of files off of it, which was great. But then I got stuck and a bunch of them didn't work. So I put it away. And then I was looking for something. So I pulled it out again like 2 years later. This year I pulled it out. And because some of the diskettes had sat and I guess dried out a bit, I was able to get more stuff off. So I've been posting stories that she had written that she never before told anybody or were never published anywhere. So you can read those blogs too on my website. I just published one recently that she wrote about Confessions of an 83-Year-Old Sage. So it's kind of fun working with Helene and all of her stuff because you just never know what you're going to find. And she was a quirky lady, but she was highly intuitive. I don't think people realize she was intuitive as she was, because of some of the stories like that she talks about. And you can hear it in that the Lost workshop tape that I have, because she says if I'm guided to do something, like, so she was really in touch with spirit guides. I mean, that's how I met her. I had her on my podcast. I had a podcast before it was cool, like I said, in 2008. And off the air, I said to her, can I come visit you? And she goes, no. I'm like, all right. I took my shot. And 3 days later, she phones me back and she said, you better come visit. Your spirit guides are really loud. So clearly I had a soul contract with her, because out of all the people in the world, I'm the one maintaining her legacy. So clearly we had a soul contract. I also feel like I have a soul contract with her granddaughter, because we connected. And, now I have a friend who still remembers Helene, but she went on her own super interesting path of spirituality and growth. Like, if you live in the Arkansas area, she does cure tans. I mean, I would love to attend. So when I'm going down for the annual National Sweepstakes Convention in next summer, I want to go early, and I want to see if she has any events planned before or after. And then I figure if I'm already in Arkansas, I might as well go see Dyke. So I'll go to Texas and hang out with Dyke for a few days, and then I'll come home. And I'll probably visit. On the way back last time, I ended up staying with Mark Mayhew and his wife Rosa. He's the miracleist here on TikTok. He's amazing. He is so good at helping people overcome. Like, he's a great life coach and abundance teacher. Like, we just clicked. I've had him on. I have had him on. I got to get him on this and interview him. And I want to go visit him and his wife. Actually, George and I want to go and visit because they're fun people. And I actually met him here on TikTok. You never know who you're going to connect with. And so I'll see him again. It's fun. Actually, we did a really silly video. If you go scroll back to like last March, I did one where by fluke, it's coincidence, I ended up wearing the same color shirt he was wearing. And he does this great video, one of his most popular videos. So I went and sat in his office. I used my phone, and I sat in his office and I started doing his exact video, like repeating it, but the same background, everything. Is so funny. And I'm getting through, and he goes, "Security, who are you?" I go, "I'm Carolyn. I'm with Words for Winning." And he's like, "How did you get in here?" I go, "I manifested it." He goes, "Well, yeah, that's okay, but it's creepy. Security." They were laughing so hard. Yeah. And he does a lot of videos where he sits in his backyard. Their property, I just think it's so cool. I did this silly video and everyone goes, yeah, that's not so big deal. But I just thought it was cool because his backyard, he lives in Tennessee. But they live so far north in Tennessee that his back fence, on the other side of his fence, is Kentucky. And then they had oh my gosh, the damage in the town. They had a tornado come through. He only lost part of his fence. So they haven't put it back up yet. So you can walk out of his backyard into the farm. There's a field there, a farmer's field. So you can stand in Kentucky, and then you could stand in Tennessee, and you could stand in Kentucky. And I just thought it was hilarious. So I did a little video, and people go, "Well, if you like that, you should go to the Four Corners," which is like, I think it's where Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado meet. I hope I have the states right. And so I Googled it. I'm like, how did I not know about that? That's something I'd like to do. Anyway, I just thought it was fun. But he sits a lot of times. He has a really nice chair out there, and he has the beautiful background, and he'll give advice on his videos. And so I was sitting there waiting for some inspiration. I didn't get any. No osmosis. But yeah, I highly recommend following Mark, the Miracleist. Find the Miracleist or Mark Mayhew here on TikTok, and he is just phenomenal. Anyway, I'm down to 18% battery. I have finished folding the laundry, and it's going to be dinner time soon, so I'm going to stop chatting and keep doing the housework before it gets too dark. And remember, always focus on the end result. Always focus on the end result, because you got this.